Carlton's going to win. Welcome back to Sound the Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back to another episode. And unfortunately, we did miss last week. Apologies for that. And we are on Zoom, but hopefully it's just momentarily. We should return to in real life because I think it's more convenient and better. Now, I think we should just get straight into it, Zave. The Saints and the Cats was the first game. And what did you think of the Saints' deplorable kicking?
So this was actually a really interesting game. So
Yeah.
the score was 47-68. And when you look at that, you're thinking it's probably going to be like heavy stoppage, no tackling, or like lots of tackling, which there was, but heavy stoppage and blah, 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 blah. But honestly, this was like one of the most free-flowing games I've seen all year. It was going end to end, end to end, end to end. But unfortunately for St Kilda, they kicked 5 goals, 17. So that affected their scoring very badly. And then Geelong, they just didn't get the ball as much as they would have liked. But when they did get it, they used it really well. So it's unfortunate for the Saints. I think they had more of the ball for the first 3 quarters until the last quarter where Geelong just turned it on. But I think Geelong was a lot cleaner in the way they generated shots, and they were just better, unfortunately.
Is it fair to say that the Saints dominated the play but just couldn't kick?
Yeah, through the first 3 quarters, I think so, definitely. Like, as I said, they had a lot more of the ball, but unfortunately for St Kilda and St Kilda fans, Geelong, like most good teams, when they did get the ball, they managed to punish you. So I think that's something Richmond's done really well over a long period of time now, or like 4 or 5 years, where the other team can have the flow of the play and have so much of the ball for like a quarter, but then every time Richmond touches it, they manage to bring it down the other end and kick a goal. So I think that's a little bit what happened to you, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah, Geelong do what good teams do, and that's finish out games, as we saw Richmond against the Giants. Cam Guthrie, by the way, in simply ridiculous form, 36 touches. Tom Stewart was great, but I think Zach Tui's torpedo gets the 3 votes.
Yeah.
The Saturday arvo was Collingwood versus Sydney, and Collingwood continue their struggles.
So I actually tipped Collingwood this week. Against a lot of what people would have been thinking. Only 4 or 5% of people tipped it, but I think most people's expectations for Sydney are like here, and mine's a little bit more down here.
Yeah.
And I think I expect a little bit more from Collingwood as well, given some of the stars that they have. We know they've still got Tagoe, who I have been critical of, but we know he's still ultra talented. They got Crisp, Maynard, Sidebottom, Pendlebury. Like, those people haven't gone away. So I thought they would be good, but and they were in the first quarter. I even phoned up my dad and I said, if I get this after tipping 9 in 2 of the last 3 games, I think I might be the best footy tipper ever. But unfortunately, after quarter time, they only kicked 1 goal. So that's not the best. But well done for Sydney.
Yeah, good or positive for the Pies was Jack Crisp. He applied great defensive pressure, had 8 tackles as well. And Caleb Poulter, the young rookie, with 18 touches. But for the Swans, I thought Hayden McLean was one to watch. He was extremely impressive. And if he assists Buddy Franklin down there, they're going to be hard to stop. But I think with Sydney, you tend to put them and Port Adelaide in the same category at the moment, where they're not contending for finals.
Contending for finals.
You think that when they play like the top 8 teams, they're probably a little out of it.
Yeah. So I think Port Adelaide are a really, really, really good team, but I don't think they're quite as good as Richmond, West Coast, Geelong, so on, so on. But I think Sydney's even worse. Like, honestly, I'd take Richmond, West Coast, Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Geelong, Bulldogs, Melbourne, GWS, and I really, really want to say Carlton as well in front of them. So I know that's probably going to fire up some people, and in particular Sydney fans, but honestly, they're still so young. So it's not like I'm saying they're done forever. They're one of the youngest teams in the league. They play like 30 people that are under 20 years of age. So they've got a lot of upside in the future. But this year, I don't really think they're as good as what their record says at the moment.
And Tom Hickey, probably the most underrated free agent pickup alongside Nick Hine from the Bombers. I'd say Hickey destroyed Grundy in the battle. Hawthorn, North Melbourne, and North Melbourne with their first win of the season.
Yeah, so this was going to be the Spoon Bowl. No one had any takeaways from this game whatsoever, but it turned into one of the more interesting games of the year, given that Hawthorn lost. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them throughout the entire week leading into their next game. So against another team that a lot of people don't think are that good, and in Carlton, but to lose to North Melbourne, it's really not a good thing. So Given that they're second last and they just lost to the person in last, they're now just a win and percentage away from being on the bottom. So if you're a Hawthorn fan, don't get your hopes up for anything coming for the rest of the season.
Not only did they lose, they lost a lead and they lost the contested possession count by 21. And Jai Simpkin, a main catalyst for that, he had 36 disposals. So a great performance by the young Roos side. The Lions destroying the Suns in the Q Clash by 73 points. And Jared Lyons, he's in unbelievable form and possibly a Brownlow chance.
Well, I wouldn't quite go that far, but he is in incredible form. We talked about it a little bit on the Supercoach podcast where in the absence of Lachie Neale, he's really stood up. He was really good last year and he's continued his form into this season with 37 touches. So absolutely ridiculous. But you said that Brisbane won by 75 points, and I think even that is a little bit flattering as far as the game went. I think they were up by like something around 75 at three-quarter time, but I think Gold Coast kicked like 4 of the last 5 to cut the lead back a little bit. So it was a dominant performance from Brisbane.
I just want to state, I love Isaac Rankin, but I don't think he's living up to the hype that surrounded him last year. He had 5 touches and didn't hit the scoreboard last week against the Lions, but I mean, he's just been in not average form all year, but he hasn't been amazing. So, I'd love to see him get involved, and I hope the Suns can get a few wins on the board.
I think that was always going to be the case, though, unfortunately. Like, I'm not saying he was always going to be bad or always not going to live up to it. But I'm not saying he's always going to be bad, but I am saying he's not going to live up to the hype because of just the expectations that people gave him last year. We know his first 3 games, he was incredible. I think he kicked like 3 goals in each of them and racked up heaps and heaps of touches, was one of the best Supercoach picks last year. But people started to compare him to like the greatest small forwards of all time. And he's like 20 years of age. He didn't play in his first season, so technically this is only his second season. So he's not going to be where some people expected, or some people were forecasting him to be just yet. But he's still got an ultra talent. He's still ultra talented and has an ultra bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, sky's the limit for him for sure. At Marvel Stadium, the Tigers. People say danger, danger, danger. I say dusty, dusty, dusty. 4 goals and a huge one at the end there. Oh, that was Rioli actually, but a huge goal to put them within 4 points, I believe it was. And then from then, Rioli did the rest.
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about the Geelong game and just good teams managed to close out games. And that's exactly what Richmond did. I think GWS was better for almost all of the game, but Richmond just kept in striking distance the entire time and managed to turn it on when it mattered the most. And as you said, Dustin Martin, 28 touches, 4 goals, another 3 votes for him.
And I'd like to give a shout out to the goal umpire who actually dislocated his shoulder after that dusty soccer off the ground, and he managed to signal it a goal even with falling away in blurred vision. But yeah, shout out to him and shout out to the Tigers. I believe they're sitting comfortably. They're in the 8 now, they're 8th, and then they have the task of the Lions this week. That's going to be a huge game.
Just quickly, if they had have lost that game, I think the importance of it is just like, it can't be overstated. Like, they're not in the 8. GWS are 8th. Richmond would be 9th if they had have lost. We know GWS has 4 wins. Richmond has 5. So it would have been flipped if they had have lost. And then going to Brisbane versus Brisbane in Brisbane next week is a tough task as well. So we could have seen them being like 2 games outside of the 8 and having their easiest part of their schedule already done, given that they've played, I think 8 of their 9 games in Melbourne and 6 of the 9 at the MCG. So it was a really important win for Richmond, and they're lucky they got it in the end.
Down to the Adelaide Oval, and the Bulldogs, I mean, their flaws were revealed in previous weeks, the second half against the Tigers and then the first half against your Blues. But this week, they put together a whole performance and they beat Port Adelaide on their own turf, which is a hard thing to do. And they were extremely impressive. Tom Liberatore had 15 more clearances than any other player, and Bontempelli had 26 disposals with 2 goals.
Far out. I mean, the Bont this year has been incredible. I picked it last year. He was good in the second half, but he didn't quite live up to what I was saying. This year, he's doing it again. Carried on his form from the second half of last year. 26 touches and 2 goals. He's finding ways to hit the scoreboard, and he's kicking them a lot more accurately than he did last year. So when he's firing, it's really good for the Bulldogs. And unfortunately for Port Adelaide, they had another test that they failed. So who do they have this week?
Port Adelaide, they play Collingwood.
Collingwood, so they should get a win then. Then they got Fremantle, another easy one. Then they've got the bye. But then they have Geelong in round 13. So if I was Ken Hinkley and the Port Adelaide players, I would be circling that game and as a must-win. Like, not from the sense that they need to win it to make the finals or anything like that, but from the sense that they haven't beaten a really good team for like 2 years now, but they have been a really good team. So if they can beat Geelong in round 13, I think a lot of people's minds might change about them.
Yeah, for sure. Ollie Wines was great. Travis Boak continues his form. But Charlie Dixon actually did kick a couple of goals, which was good to see because he's been a little out of form, and we did speak on it, I think, last episode. So good to see
just
him.
on Charlie Dixon and just on Port Adelaide not being able to beat top 8 teams, he finished with 2, but I think they were both in either the 3rd or 4th quarter. So, and leading up to this game, an interesting stat that you may not have heard, or you may have heard, I think the commentators were going on about it a lot, but coming into round 9, he had not kicked the goal against the top 8 team for the entire year. So it's not the best thing, not the thing you want from your premier forward, your Australian forward. So he's lucky he got a couple of them in against the Bulldogs.
For sure. The next game, it was close and it was tight, and Essendon prevailed by 7 points. Darcy Parish, 39 touches, 10 clearances, a goal, and as I said, Nick Hine, probably the most underrated free agent along with Tom Hickey. He continues his career best form, and I'm spewing as a Saints supporter, but he went at 84% efficiency with 31 disposals.
Yeah, again, this was a difficult game to predict. Yet another tip that I got wrong, but it was a close one, and it was always going to be. Fife and Brayshaw again stood up for Fremantle like they have all year, and
Taverner too.
Yeah, kicking. I think what he kicked
4 goals. 4.
Yeah, 4 goals, 3. So really good from him. I think Nat Fife, he's had some of the worst kicking issues ever this year.
Yeah. I think he kicked 2 goals, 18, I think I saw, or 16.
I think it's even worse, but either last week or the week before, he kicked like 0 goals, 6. So not the best game, but Essendon, they did really well to come out with the win. Some of their young guns again stood up, so really well for them.
Which is not what you want out of a key forward. I mean, you see guys like Harry Mackay, who kicks a fair amount of points. Max King, he kicked 1 goal, 5 on the weekend. Joe Danaher sometimes, Hipwood. But Taverner, I think, 3 points as well. You have to convert as a key forward. I know there's some from some distances and tough angles, but I mean, you're seeing goals missed from 25 out on a slight angle, which just should be kicked. And if they don't capitalise, they lose games, which is evident from this game and the Saints game.
Yeah, I think there was a really interesting piece in Footy Classified last year where Matthew Lloyd, one of the best set-shot goal kickers ever, analysed the kicking style of a few different players, and they brought up what he was saying were 3 of the best players in the AFL in Dangerfield, Cripps and Bontempelli, who are all horrendous set-shot goal kickers. So, and I think it's really interesting because I know Bontempelli and Dangerfield in particular are amazing field kicks, but when they get in front of the goals, they just get the yips a little bit. But I think if those sort of players had a set shot routine, like someone like Taylor Walker or even Tom Hawkins, they would just be so much better. But you can't have everything, I guess.
Now, the big news coming out of today is we'll go to the Carlton-Melbourne game. Apparently, it's been reported that Paddy Cripps has re-signed for 4 years, and he did play well on the weekend, but some of those last quarter decisions were a little iffy, but I mean, he played very well. He had 10 tackles, he had 27 disposals, and that's the Paddy Cripps that I love to see. I know it seems like I'm always on his case, but I just want him to be a great player because 2 years ago he was the best in the competition as voted by the coaches, I believe it was. So it's good to see that he's returning to that form, and hopefully he proves why he deserves the 4-year contract.
Yeah, this is something that makes me really, really happy because I think Cam Luke. So Cam Luke said something that I really, really liked. So it was something along the lines of, don't ask Patrick Cripps to prove it for this contract because he's proved it for the last 5 years. And that is just spot on exactly what I think. He's been the heart and soul of our club for so long. Even this week, he just stood up. Like we know he's been like down on what Patrick Cripps' form is, but this week, 27 touches, 10 tackles. For the year, I think he's top 10 in contested possessions and top 10 in clearances, which is exactly what he does. So he's an absolute star, and if he left Carlton, it would just rip the heart out, and all of everything I predict for Carlton in the future would just completely change. So really, really good news from a Carlton fan, and just the best news possible.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they did go down to the D's, who are 9-0, and it's the first time, I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head. It's a huge number. I think it was 50, 60 years odd, and it's great to see. But can they do it in the finals is the question. But I mean, they don't have to focus on that now. Christian Salem, he's unbelievable. Clayton Oliver, again, 18 contested possessions, and James Jordan with 20 touches. So a great year for them so far, and they can back it up. I believe they have the Crows at Adelaide Oval. So a bit of a tough task because the atmosphere at Adelaide Oval obviously one-sided. But I think they're in shape to go 10-0.
And definitely against Adelaide. I will say Carlton are currently 3-6, and I know I've said every single podcast that we've only lost to good teams and Collingwood, but I think this game against Melbourne was the first game where we've just been outplayed. Honestly, they were just better than us on the day. The whole game, they were just better than us. So that's just about the only thing I can say. Max Gawn as well. We know he had a really horrible first half, and I think Mark Pitney was actually really impressive in that half, but he got on top of us in the last quarter. He finished with 44 hitouts, and the last half, the second half, he just destroyed us all game. So something that Carlton need to be a little bit better at stopping, but something that Melbourne would be really encouraged by.
Pitternet's playing well this year, though, compared to what he was doing last year, though. Is that fair to say?
At times, like I think there's definitely periods where he's been really, really good. I think the first half, or even the whole game against Essendon, was it Essendon? Actually, I think it was Brisbane. The whole game against Brisbane, he was one of our best players. The first half against Melbourne, as I just said, where he was really, really good, but he's not quite like a Gawn or a Grundy, or even one of the lower tiered ruckmen, but. Tom De Koning is someone that I really, really want to see come into our team in the next couple of weeks. We know he's been suffering with the injury, but he's now played, I think, 2 games in the VFL, so maybe one more, and then he'll be back in the team. So really looking forward to that.
The final game of the round at Optus Stadium, I think this was a win that personified a just did enough victory. I mean, you see a 30-point win on the scoreboard, but I don't think it's reflective of how the Crows played. I mean, they were hard at it. And they were resilient, but Jack Darling, he kicked 5 goals in 17 minutes in the second quarter, and I think that's what really wrapped it up. Tim Kelly proves to be a great pickup. But for the Crows, young rookie James Rowe had 22 touches. Ben Keys continues his great form as not only a tagger, but a midfielder that just goes head first at the ball, and that's what I love about him. Six clearances, 32 disposals, and Rory Laird was great.
The other one I really want to give a little bit of praise this week is Alex Witherden. The fact that he's in their team coming into the season is just ridiculous. 30 touches this week, 26 of which are 12 marks. 26 of his 30 touches were kicks, which is a very high percentage, but we know he's one of the best kicks in the league. And he takes risky kicks and like really difficult ones, but he's still kicked at 83% efficiency. So it's just a very good game from him.
I believe Andrew Gaff had 30 touches as well, and Josh Rotham, 10 marks, 24 disposals, exactly what you want in a defender, and their defence is holding up well. Jared Brander in the mix too, who's a second-year player. But that's all for the review. Now to the tips of this week, the first game of which is Brisbane versus Richmond.
This is probably the hardest one and a really, really difficult one. Other than this, I think they're all pretty straightforward, but I think I'm going to have to tip Brisbane, but only because it's at their home ground. It's almost as 50-50 as it gets.
And if Brisbane do win, it kicks the Tigers to 5-5, which could place them out of the 8. So a huge season-defining game. Maybe a little early for that, but a huge game nonetheless. I'll probably go with the Lions as well. The Blues and the Hawks at the G.
I'm going Carlton. It's another must-win because it's another team that we need to beat. Everyone's going to flame me for this, absolutely everyone, but I still have Carlton finishing 8th, and it's because of these sort of games that we must win. If we don't beat Hawthorn this week, I'm going to remove them straight from the 8th. But as long as we keep beating the teams that we need to beat, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, I'll go with the Blues as well. The Cats and the Suns.
Cats, pretty straightforward.
Yep. Now, the Crows play the Demons, but on their own floor.
Still picking the Demons.
Yeah. Okay. Although they did beat the Cats in week 1 or 2.
Still picking the Demons.
All right. The Dogs and the Saints at Marvel Stadium.
As much as the Saints won last week, and as much as it would be really good for them to win, still going the Dogs.
Yeah, I'll go with the Dogs, but I do think the Saints, if they can kick straight, then they're a slight chance. The Dockers and the Swans at Optus.
This is a tough one because
I think it's pretty straightforward.
That's exactly what everyone's going to be saying, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Sydney on the podcast, but I think if you're in my footy tipping league, you might see something different on the day because Nat Fyfe is an absolute star, and I think he's going to be the best player on the field. But I don't know. Sydney, they're currently in the 8, 6 wins. They've been really, really good, but I think that it's time for them to lose. They just have to lose one of these games. So I'm going to go Sydney, but I might change it.
I'm going to go with Sydney too. The Giants and the Eagles at Giants Stadium.
I'm going to go with the Eagles, despite how impressive GWS has been over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, the big blow of Toby Green, who we forgot to mention as well, unfortunately. And he played the rest of that game with the fractured shoulder. Even at the end, the free kick that some people thought should have been paid, it wasn't that moment which I thought it was. So he actually had that fall as well with a fractured shoulder. So great courage by him. I'll go with the Eagles, the Pies and the Power.
Power.
Yep. And the Bombers against the Kangaroos.
Despite Kangaroos getting a win, I'm still going to have to go with the Bombers.
I'll go with the Bombers too, but I think it could be a competitive game. And I do love that slot of 4:40, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. I say it every week, but I love that time slot. So that's all for the round 9 review and the round 10 tips. Apologies for missing last week. We're back on track and we'll have an NBA video out, I believe, the day after you're seeing this. So things heating up sport-wise. A good week footy-wise. Good luck to the Blues and go the Saints. Hopefully we can upset the Dogs. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for enjoying and we'll catch you later.